Before I get started today, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. So I finally did it. I finally watched Citizen Kane.
Jesus fucking Christ, it's about time!
The film that a lot of people consider to be the greatest film of all time. So what did I think of it? I don't do reviews to be edgy and to go against the grain, and I certainly don't follow trends either. All I do is give my honest opinion, and I hope you can respect that as much as I can respect yours.
You son of a bitch.
So if you look at any top 10 list, most likely people are going to have Citizen Kane on it as one of the greatest films ever created. Up until this point, I had never saw it. I felt like as a film lover, I was almost obligated to at least give it a chance because of all the positive things that people say about it on a consistent basis. After watching the movie, I went and read some reviews of it because I just kind of wanted to see what exactly people love so much about it. And one review in particular on IMDb summed it up pretty well for me, and that's that you don't have to like something in order to respect it.
That makes sense.
I thought that was a profound way of looking at things, and I think that's something that people can implement in 2021 when they're criticizing movies. Because in today's world where everyone's opinion is heard, it's kind of become customary for people to shit on other films to make a film that they like look better. It's just not necessary, and I never understood that. Like, we can have more than one great film a year. I see this happen a lot, specifically around Oscar time, and let's be honest, if a movie is nominated for an Oscar, most likely it's of quality. I've always preached on this channel that people need to learn to respect great filmmakers.
But you don't ask for respect. You don't offer friendship. You don't even think to call me Godfather.
Regardless of whether or not you like their movies or not. But when I sat down to watch Citizen Kane, there were certain expectations I had for the movie based on all the hype surrounding it. I see why this film has been studied by film students for years and years. All the things you heard that are great about this movie are true. You got the camera work, the cross dissolves, the story structure, the acting, the directing, the use of the score, and I can see and appreciate all of those things and totally understand why people praise them. A lot of things that were done in this movie from a filmmaking perspective were never done in any film prior to this. So it kind of set the standard and it revolutionized the way people make films. Two things in particular I'd like to talk about. There's one scene where there is a conversation happening and the line of dialogue is actually finished in the next scene, and the scene isn't even like in the same time period. There's also a really cool shot of a picture, and it kind of goes into the picture and it kind of dissolves and you go into when the picture was actually taken. Like, that type of shit just wasn't done back then. I feel like a more appropriate description for Citizen Kane is that it's the most influential film rather than the greatest film. And yes, I do believe there's a difference, and again, this is just my opinion. Legendary directors have often cited Citizen Kane as being one of their biggest influences. And given the time period it was released, I totally understand that and respect the fact that this movie is responsible for a lot of my favorite directors getting into directing and how it progressed the art form and it made people want to strive to be better than it. The main problem with Citizen Kane for me is the story. And it's not how the story was told. That was done very effectively. It's the story that they are trying to tell. I just didn't find this story all that interesting or entertaining. Does that make me a bad person? I don't think so.
I'm just gonna bash your brains. I'm gonna bash him right the fuck in.
That's just me being honest about what works for me and what doesn't. And that's what makes us individuals. Some things appeal to us and some things don't. And before people jump to conclusions in the comments, it's not about pacing. You know, I watch 2001 and Apocalypse Now pretty frequently. I've marathoned the Godfather trilogy on more than one occasion, and The Godfather is in my top 5 movies of all time. All of those films would be considered slow by most people, but I enjoy them, so it's definitely not about pacing. I personally found the stories they were trying to tell in these movies more thought-provoking and more entertaining than I did the story they were trying to tell in Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane's story revolves around this Howard Hughes-like figure called Charles Foster Kane. The story starts with him on his deathbed and he utters the word Rosebud as he passes away. So reporter Jerry Thompson is tasked with finding out the meaning of the word Rosebud. There was a lot of mystery that surrounded him and people were very interested in what he was or who he was as a person, which is essentially the whole purpose of this movie. I will admit I love a good newsreel segment in a movie. I think it's something that is kind of a lost art and should be done more often when it's appropriate, of course. Newsreels can very often be an effective way to tell the audience about the world that the story is set in, or at least in this case, the character that the story is about. So this reporter takes it upon himself to interview some of Kane's closest associates, and friends. Through the course of the film, we learn how Kane came from humble beginnings to becoming super rich to then becoming a recluse. Because of his extreme wealth, he's able to take control of the New York Inquirer, something Kane admittedly knew nothing about. That's kind of how they portray him, especially early in the film. He kind of just does things because he can. But he is a complicated figure, and he almost feels guilty about the success that he's had in life, about his privilege. Kane exerts his power and uses the newspaper to manipulate public opinion about the Spanish-American War. It's good to know that the media has never changed. Around the same time, he marries the niece of the President of the United States, so he's making all the right connections. This leads to him pursuing a political career. But his political career is short-lived because he goes through this scandal after he has an affair with this singer. So he pretty much becomes a dick at this point, and he forces his new singer wife to do things that she doesn't really want to do. He even goes as far as to complete a bad review of one of her performances in his own newspaper and publish it. He even forces her into seclusion, and this eventually causes a split between them, and she leaves him too. Even though he hated his privilege, it felt like he was much more optimistic about helping people earlier in the film than he is by the end of it. It kind of feels like the power that he didn't even want still managed to corrupt him. At the end of the film, during a thrashing of his wife's belongings, because he's obviously frustrated about the situation, he comes across this snow globe, which he is holding on his deathbed, and it kind of has a calming effect on him. He also utters the word Rosebud while holding and looking into the snow globe. After Kane passes away, you see people going through his belongings, and you see someone throwing a sled into a fire that has Rosebud printed on it. So what does this all mean? Through my brief research into this movie, there seems to be a lot of speculation about what Rosebud means, what the snow globe means. My thoughts are he never really wanted the power that he had. He didn't feel like he deserved it, and he did things to self-sabotage himself. He was unhappy, but I think the snow globe and the sled were a reminder to him, and it took him back to a time in his childhood when he was happy. But it was also the point in his life where everything changed. The day that they show of his childhood where he was happy one second to being told that he's being taken away the next second, that had to have a lasting impact on him as a person. It changed the course of his life. He became bitter, and it affected how he treated people moving forward, including himself. That's just my thoughts on it, but again, this is my first time watching it, so I understand the message they were trying to relay with this movie, and how they were trying to tell it by showing us this man's life. But again, this story just wasn't entertaining to me. He is a well-written character, of course. I'm not saying that at all. I can appreciate this movie and respect it for its influence, but I don't think it's something that I ever have the desire to watch again. From a pure filmmaking perspective, this would get the highest scores you could possibly give a film, of course. But from a entertainment and rewatchability factor, which is very important to me and should be to most people, and the fact that I just couldn't personally connect with the story in any way, I'm gonna have to give this movie a careless Sam Gerard.
I don't care!
Just to clarify, if you don't know my rating system, that doesn't mean that it's a bad movie. It just means that I didn't really have any kind of emotional connection to it. Again, though, I want to stress, let's make it a norm to respect things even though we don't like them, especially classic films and great filmmakers. Because without them, we wouldn't have this great variety of stories being told to us that we can indulge in whenever we see fit. Always remember, it's all for the love of movies. So have you seen Citizen Kane? Let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. As always, please like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell for notifications, and I'll see you next time right here on Real Shift. Thanks for watching. Peace out.
Y'all be cool. Right on.